Welcome back to another episode of the Animal Liberation Hour, where we seek insight from animal activists around the world so we can think, reflect, learn, grow, and be inspired to create positive change for all. My name is Shriya, and this is the Animal Liberation Hour. The Animal Liberation Hour is a podcast brought to you by Animal Activism Collective. AAC's mission is to grow and strengthen the animal rights movement by providing a safe space for activists to have access to a supportive community and valuable educational resources. From one-on-one mentorship to free workshops and training to this podcast, AAC aims to empower humans to take action for the animals so that the world will have more inspired activists to achieve animal liberation. For more information, check out our website, which we will link below, and also our link tree, which you can find in the show notes as well. There, you can sign up for a free mentor, donate so that we can continue this work, and keep up with everything AAC. In today's episode, I am so honored to be joined by the inspiring Brenda and Jon Vetter, the founders of SoL Criations Farm Sanctuary in Endeavor, Wisconsin. And their story is quite a rare gem, and I am so grateful that I'm able to share this with our community. Both Brenda and Jon actually come from a 4-H community where raising baby animals to be sent off to auction and eventually slaughtered was the norm. And Jon, in fact, was a former hunter. So one can only imagine the revelation, the growth, and the learning that came alongside starting an entire sanctuary, because both of them have dedicated their entire lives to protect animals, educate the community, and be a space of kindness and compassion, nonviolence, peace, and respect for all life. Since the founding of their sanctuary, they have welcomed animals who were in need, who were abandoned, who have been rescued from horrifying situations, and now live their lives in peace and dignity. Currently, they have over 80 rescued residents who are keeping them on their toes, but they're always a delight. So without any further delay, let's get into this exciting, inspiring, and just joyful conversation with Brenda and Jon of SoL Criations Farm Sanctuary. Gosh, Brenda and Jon of SoL Criations Farm Sanctuary, I'm so thrilled to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. We're equally as excited.
Oh my gosh. No, I have had the honor of getting to visit your lovely sanctuary, and I'm really wanting to get into all of the nitty gritty. We're having a little cat friend show up on the camera.
Yes,
We always
there may be a few.
we love that. We love that. But yes, and your story, just from visiting you with another amazing nonprofit in Chicago, Cruelty for You and Me, that does really important work in the community. We had a volunteer trip to come and help you folks out at SoL Criations and, get our hands dirty and such. And it was so great learning about your story and how it all started. So let's start at the very beginning, because I am sure it is a story of positivity and grace and growth, and just showing that people can change for the better. So I will stop talking and let you all take it away.
All right. So, oh gosh. So our story kind of goes way back. Well, I guess I should start at the beginning. Jon and I both grew up in very typical American families. Jon's dad was an avid hunter. They ate a lot of wild game. Your grandpa had a farm where they raised some animals and some crops. So, we weren't farm kids, but Jon did get to visit the farm at his grandparents'. I lived in Waukesha City, and my dad was a meat cutter.
And where is that?
It's a suburb of Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, okay.
Yeah. So near Milwaukee, and Jon grew up in Madison. Okay. So both city kids. my dad was a meat cutter, and then he worked his way up to being a USDA meat inspector, where he worked in slaughterhouses. He didn't do the killing, but he was there to inspect things, and he watched everything happen. So, but given all of that, and he came home, he tried not to tell us a whole lot about what happened, but I remember some pretty horrifying stories, and I remember like the smell, on his clothes and things. But given all of that, we still were a meat and potatoes family. I mean, it was just, just the way it had to be. So fast forward, John and I met and got married and started our family, and we were raising our kids very traditional to American diet. And we moved out here in 2005, and with no intentions of starting a sanctuary. We wanted to live in the woods and have land to be a little bit more self-sufficient, and we wanted to build a wheelchair accessible house for our daughter who has disabilities. So the plan was to, build our house and move out here, have some chickens for eggs, and John was going to hunt in the woods, and we were going to, garden and do all the things. And we did. So we moved out here and we were doing all the things, and John was hunting. We got some chickens for eggs. So we were raising chickens for eggs. We talked about raising animals for meat, but we never did, because even at that point, I was like, I could never love them and then eat them. So, I mean, you always have this, we're born with it, this knowing and understanding, but if you don't look at it, it's different.
Yeah.
So we did all that, and somehow I fell in love with alpacas, and we decided, I don't remember. Do you remember what even introduced us?
I don't know either, but I remember you and the girls wanted horses. I'm like, yeah, where you don't have room for horses. So you found a little horse called an alpaca, and that's how we got started.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, we have this space and these alpacas. Oh my God. So we took all these seminars and classes and visited alpaca farms so we could learn everything about raising alpacas. And our first 6 alpacas came in 2011. And we started doing the whole alpaca farm business thing, which for alpacas, it's raising them for their fiber, kind of like sheep for wool. It's for their fleece, for their fiber, and you also breed them and sell them. That's how you do an alpaca business. So we started with all the product, selling fiber items and selling their fiber. And we bred some alpacas and had some babies. But as soon as the babies were born, well, they were part of our family, so they were never going to leave. So that was a big fail on the alpaca. So at the same time, so now we're living in the country doing all the country things. So when you're doing that, your kids join 4-H. So our girls join 4-H.
Is it mandatory?
It is not.
Okay.
It's just something, it's very, when you live in the country in a farming community, it's what all the kids do. It's the culture. Yeah. So where we live, we're surrounded by farms. It's a very much a farming community, and the kids grow up learning how to farm. So our girls joined 4-H, and 4-H is wonderful when they teach kids about, woodworking or gardening or crafts. And it's a fantastic organization, but they also teach kids how to raise animals to then become products. Yeah. And it was pretty upsetting and shocking, to me, that they would teach the kids, like, it's part of the program that you have a baby animal in spring, and you raise them and love them. And then at the end of the season, it culminates in fair, where the animals are auctioned off. And it's heartbreaking and sad. And that was kind of, I don't know, there's a whole lot of things happen at the same time. But I think that was kind of the catalyst that maybe got us really thinking. And being with the alpacas and starting to question what we were doing, and getting to know them and love them and watch them. And some of the things that we were taught were really starting to feel uncomfortable. Like, for instance, like making breeding choices or weaning babies from their mothers. I remember we were taught, like, you wean them at 6 months. You have to do that. And so we did, because we didn't know. And oh my God, the moms cried, the babies cried, I cried. It was just, it was awful. Yeah. So, it was those things where then afterwards I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, moms know when to wean their babies, babies know. So after that, we didn't do that anymore. We let them do it naturally, and it was beautiful and perfect. And so just things like that kind of were like the catalyst to start learning more. And we completely dove into learning about the realities of animal agriculture and factory farming and everything surrounding it. And it completely destroyed my heart. Like, I will never be the same again. And, along the way, my kids and Jon learned along with me. And it was kind of a process like, oh, I'm not buying those eggs anymore. We're going to buy cage-free eggs. You know what I mean?
The whole thing.
Oh, yeah. It was the process. And like, oh, we're going to only buy organic meat. And then we're only going to eat the meat that Jon hunts because that's more ethical. Of course, every step is a step in the right direction. And I remember it was 10 years ago, actually, probably maybe this month, October, that Jon was out bow hunting. And in the midst of all this, and he came back and he said, he put his bow down and he said, I'm done. And I mean, you can tell this part.
Yeah. I was like, what happened at that hunt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I grew up hunting and eating wild game my whole life. And I'm just out there doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. And I always did enjoy being out in the woods, but the rest of the hunting trip was not my favorite. I'll always say that. But I'm sitting in my stand watching, and there's a little young doe walking right underneath my stand. And I was like, just watching her, enjoying her. And I think she looks an awful lot like one of our alpacas. And I just, as I sat and watched her and enjoyed watching her, I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. Who am I to say it's okay to shoot, kill, and eat this animal, and then go and feed and take care of this animal? I mean, they're all the same, So I quit. I said it just didn't feel right, and I'm done. So never did it again.
Yeah, and I imagine that some of Brenda, like your learning and having them along with you, had also planted some of those seeds were in there. So when you're probably viewing them through a different lens, because now you're seeing let the baby wean off naturally, to really trying to have them be the agents of their own bodies and their selves, and then observing that, and then when you actually are out there wanting to see that be the reality for these other animals is amazing.
Exactly.
I love that. I like it. Still like gives me goosebumps hearing that story, because it's like, whoa, it's like the most unexpected transition from so.
And even shortly before that, work was slow for Jon, and he took a part-time job working at a bison ranch where they raised bison for meat, and he did the shooting. And so it was big for him, so anyone who ever says, I could never go vegan, I'm telling you.
You're like, Jon, talk to us.
Yeah, exactly.
15 years ago, if you'd have told me I was going to be vegan and had a sanctuary, I'd have laughed at you. There's no way.
Now you bake the most incredible vegan cookies. I still haven't forgotten about those. They're sensational. So folks, if you're ever volunteering at SoL Criations, which of course we'll get into how folks can get involved later on, you just might get treated with some of the best cookies there ever.
I could do that.
So how did it all translate into a sanctuary? Because if I'm not mistaken, the alpacas are still there.
Yes.
Now, just in a different capacity.
Exactly. Yes. And honestly, I mean, they've always lived their life pretty much the same with us.
They crack me up the way they just like walk around and inspecting.
They're so funny.
They're so funny.
They're so funny. But so right after that, I mean, it just kind of snowballed, and we just cleaned out the fridge, went vegan, and we were
Yeah.
done. And we kind of, we talked about, we have this space, we have our time, and now we're passionate about the vegan message and about animal activism. So we thought, we could do much better with our space and time and energy to say, rescue as many animals as we can from the situations that we have learned about, and invite people here to meet them and tell their stories so we can teach other people and hopefully inspire them too. So it'll be 10 years ago. I mean, it was right before
Amazing.
Thanksgiving that we were done.
Oh,
So 10 years ago.
perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. Like next month. So yeah.
Wow.
So it's been 10 years and it's just went like crazy since then. It's insane.
Wow. That is, yeah, I love that, how it's, and so at that point, and before you transitioned to a sanctuary, were you still selling the alpaca products, or were you kind of getting off of that too?
I think we were slowly getting away from it already.
Well, the market was going down, and it was harder to find places to even process the alpaca wool, and so it was not anything. We just gave the fiber to the mills and let them do what they needed to with it.
Yeah. We kind of just, I don't know, we just kind of set it down and never looked back.
Yeah. And so what was it like bringing in your first rescue into, now that you're a sanctuary? Like, do you want to share their story? Who was your first rescue?
Our first rescue, SoL and Fancy, I would say. And SoL and Fancy were our first goats. And it was during the transition, that we were we didn't even realize it was going to be a rescue.
Right.
It started off very slow. I mean, it was just Brenda and I, and it was all our own time and money we put into this, and we just kept kind of slowly picking up more and more animals, and the mood kind of changed, and it's like, we just evolved and kept rolling with it, and it just continued to grow. But SoL and Fancy were our first two, and we miss them very much.
Yeah.
So
how did they?
Yeah, they were actually we intended to buy them. This was like during the transition period before. And so we went to the farm to pick them. I talked to the farmer, set it up that we're going to go pick them out. They were two little Angora goats, a little boy and a little girl. And so we were going to go to the farm to pick them up. And we got there, and it was a farm where they raised sheep for meat and Highland cattle for meat. Yeah. And then they had the Angora goats, and they're another like fiber animal that you use them for their fiber. And so the goats we were getting were Angora goats, but so we didn't know, but we walked into the farm and he gave us a tour around and showed us, how things work at the farm. And I remember that the sheep had their tails bandaged because all their tails had been docked.
Oh.
And I was like kind of really upset by that and didn't realize that was something that actually happened. And then we went to get the little goats, and they were in this dark pen in a barn. I mean, maybe it was 8 by 8, maybe an 8-foot square stall. I just piled with manure in the bottom. There was, how many goats were in there? Maybe 4 or 6 goats in this pen.
Oh my gosh.
Never saw the sunshine. Never, their hair was matted and covered it was dirty and covered in poop. And so the farmer said, well, I have to ear tag the female before you can take her. And I was like, well, what? Excuse me? I'm like, no. We're not going to do that. And, he waited for us to be there to do this. And we're going, no, we don't need an ear tag. He said, it's the law. We have to do it. And I'm like, just give me and it is the law. It's a tracking system for disease. And they have to track the females so that if it's passed on to their young, where the disease.
Because it's different when you're wanting to bring them to a sanctuary.
Yes.
But got it.
Yep. So that's why they do that. And I was like, telling, we're not going to breed her. We're not going to do these things. Just give me the tag. And he wouldn't. So his wife held her and he put the ear tag in while we're watching. And she turned her head and ripped the tag out because it hurt. She was crying. There was blood everywhere. They turned her around and put it in her other ear. It was like so traumatic for all of us. So we take this little baby goat and we get her in the van, and she's crying and hurt and bleeding. Yeah. And we get her home, and she hated us because she associated that with, it was so disturbing and upsetting. And so I didn't know we could take the ear tags out at that time. And it took, I don't know, maybe a year. And we were shopping and found the little tool for $3 that you could take the ear tags out, and came home. And before that, I mean, she would chase us around and headbutt, and you couldn't get near her.
Oh, no.
She was so upset. So we took the ear tag out, and true story, she was like best friends from that day forward.
Oh, sweet girl.
Yes, I'm not exaggerating. It was, And her and her brother were just so beautiful. And
Wow.
So,
that is, and I really love how you describe the process too, in that, it's not, okay, now you want to offer a safe space for them, but how do you go about getting them in? And I do hear a lot of folks who are passionate about rescue, like they'll go to these fairs and they will buy animals and then bring them. So I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts. Of course, this is by no means like it's like a judgment-free zone. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because I hear one side of it being, no, now we're just, fueling the demand for this to happen, even though, because who's to know that they're going to sanctuary or they're being used for food? You just think you're doing the right thing for that individual life, it matters, but for the overarching system. So how would you go about that now?
So, I mean, so at that time, it was before we knew better and before we were even, a sanctuary. Now we would never pay for an animal.
Sure.
Just because, like exactly what you said. I mean, as soon as when you give the farmer money, it's just going to go right back into the system for another animal to be exploited or used. So, and I know it's so hard. It is so hard to make that choice. And I understand how people say, but I can save this life with just $50. And it is heartbreaking and so difficult, but we can't. We can't, because there's other animals out there who need rescue, and and then that money just drives the system again. So
it is such a tricky space, and people have different opinions. Sorry, go ahead, Jon.
No, I disagree. It is very difficult, and at the point where we're at now, we get calls almost daily to take animals, and the money that we would have spent to buy this one animal and continue their process, that money could be better spent for vet bills, for food, fencing, housing, to help take care of the ones that are truly in need. I mean, they're all in need, but
all in need,
we're
resources are limited.
Yes, exactly right.
No, I appreciate that, because it is something that we have to grapple with, and it's a large system, and trying to put a dent in it, and it's a lot, and we're all doing the best that we can, and it's a tricky space, but
it really is.
So throughout your process, we do like to talk about mentorship. So who have been mentors in your lives, or who have or currently do inspire the work that you do? And they don't necessarily have to be vegans or animal rights people.
You want to go?
Well, when we were learning about, veganism and trying to learn more about that, and, we ran across a guy by the name of Gary Urofsky, and he did a lot of talks in colleges and stuff. It was like that. To me, I understand his pick of that age group, because they're adults, but they're young enough to still want to be able to change and learn. So that's a perfect time to, when you talk to an 8-year-old and talk them into being vegan, they go home, their parents feed them, meat and potatoes. That doesn't really help. But he was very outspoken, very straightforward activist, and I really appreciated his point of view. And that meant a lot to me. He seemed like a, real straightforward guy. And I'm
Yep.
that way, and I
Mhm.
appreciate that,
Yeah.
confidence to do it myself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gary Yourofsky is amazing and pretty hardcore.
The speech,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the pretty good one.
But
Yeah.
but he's, effective. He really helped us, learn how to speak about things and,
Mhm.
firm up our own beliefs. And on the flip side, Will Tuttle, who wrote the World Peace Diet. I mean, they're polar opposite, but they were probably the two most inspirational people to me,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
of course, Gene Bauer. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, I think those three just really,
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a very interesting mix.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Really cool. That's the beauty of the space. You can be inspired by various sources. Just
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I can't think
his
of his
name right
name.
now either.
The Mad
The
Cowboy.
Mad Cowboy.
He was on.
oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't think of his name either.
It's just drawing a blank. Yeah.
Right. But
It's the person like he was on the Oprah show
Yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
yes,
It'll
Lard-
come to
lard-
us through the course.
it will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he was
Yeah.
phenomenal
If you
also.
remember it, feel free to shout it out at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing I wanted to tell you also about
Yeah.
Gary Yourofsky is he was the first one to like put it in the way that I understood, that he's like,
So-
I can't be mad at you because you don't know. But after I talk to you, then you know. Now it's
Yeah.
on you.
Yes.
Yeah,
know?
and I do appreciate when, at least because I think in one of his interviews he mentions a friend of his where his friend was like, you know what, but I just don't care. And I have more respect for people who say, yeah, it is what it is. I don't care, than people who know the facts and are disturbed by it, but choose not to change their
Right.
ways. And I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
there is
Yeah.
yeah, there's truth to that. I'd rather someone just be like, you know what, doesn't bother me. I have more respect for that than
Yeah.
those who would
Yeah.
rather just hide behind and not see the truth. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're all works in progress. So
Yeah. And it's Howard Lyman.
Yep.
yes,
you
there
go.
we go.
There it
Okay,
is.
I was actually kind of worried that we were gonna be in like a completely different topic, and then we're just
Right.
like a name, Howard Lyman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And no offense, we love him equally. He's
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
fantastic.
but they all have, I think some elements that spoke to
Yeah.
you relatable within the sanctuary space or their approach to activism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and talking about going the longest distance for like somebody like Howard Lyman, going from like, his state's largest cattle producer to
Yeah.
a vegan activist,
Yeah.
and he's a straight shooter too, and he
Mhm.
gets it done as well, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it's one more guy that says, hey, it can be done,
100%. Absolutely. And for me, what stood out with the way that you spoke about each of the residents in your sanctuary was how, regardless of their disabilities, if any, for example, one of your residents, the pigs, didn't have her hind legs. And so different residents have different abilities to function in the best way that they can. And often, I hear people kind of making it like a sad story and making us feel bad. And I found the way that you describe them to be very like how you would talk about anyone, like, oh, this is so and so, and this is how she lives her life. And there was not that element of pity, which I thought was so powerful and important when we talk about these residents. We don't, because, then when she's using her forelimbs to move from point A to point B, it didn't make us feel sad for her because she was just happy to move around and get from, kind of play with her or nudge around her friends or like dig through the mud. Like there was no obvious distress with the way they were living their lives, regardless of not having a limb or things like that. So how was that something that you were very intentional about? What was that process like? Or was that something that you even thought about?
It's very intentional. And I think it, like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, our oldest daughter has physical disabilities. So we've been living with disability for 35 years. And,
Right.
and we are, very much like our community of friends. A lot of people have different abilities. And I think, learning from them translates to everybody, that everybody's unique and everybody is valued. And it always bothered me with my daughter when someone would feel sorry for and give you that pity. And most people with disabilities, obviously I can't speak for everybody, most people with disabilities are very okay with themselves. And I see that especially, with our animals that have disabilities. They are who they are, and they live their lives, and we make accommodations the best that we can to give them, the best opportunity to live their life as fully as possible. And they just go with it.
Yes, they absolutely do. Like the way you talked about them and the way that they were presented and the way it was with respect and dignity, they were, nothing looked undignified, if that makes sense. It looked so, it it felt empowering for me to see that, like that they were living their empowered, dignified lives. And I like that, the intention behind it, because it was like, we're not here to throw them a pity party. We're here to give them the best quality of life that we can and respect them for who they are. And that really showed.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh yeah. And is
I'm
that
so
something
glad
that
to hear
you
that.
No, I'm so happy to see that, or I guess grateful that through time I've evolved to be able to recognize and I think it's had to, do with, I think we may have briefly talked about a photographer who exclusively photographs older animals and not the younger ones, because it's like, oh, baby animals are cute, but then the aging with dignity concept that sanctuaries offer was very, and I could,
beautiful.
It came through. And I want to know how that shows up, because of course you were talking to a bunch of vegan animal rights people, it's different. But when you talk to people who are not vegan, like, do they seek out coming to the sanctuary? Like, what are their expectations when they come in? And how do you, like, what is the dynamic like?
Well, it depends. It's different all the time. Brenda usually gives the tours because she's better at talking, and but like you said, it's you have to kind of be straightforward, but you also, it depends if there's little kids and what level, and they're at with their parents, and whether they're accommodating for them or not. But you still want to get the point across and let them know that there are options, and plant the seed and let it go at that, and that's the best you can do. But yeah, I don't know if you had anything you want to add.
I just think it's really important. Of course, saving lives and rescuing these animals is super important for each of them. It's their lives. But there's billions of others out there that we can't rescue or never have the opportunity to. So when we have people here, it is incredibly important to tell their stories and to share the realities of what life is for them. When they're being exploited or used as a product, and what happens to them. So that's always like the most important thing when we're giving tours, is to tell their stories and what brought them here, or to tell stories, surrounding what happens to animals in agriculture. So and we tailor it to the group, to
And usually, like, are they, because sometimes, folks can come in expecting a petting zoo like experience. So who are the folks who like are reaching out, especially, sanctuaries, they need space. And with space, you're surrounded by a lot of agricultural animal
Yeah.
raising operations. So
Yes.
what is that like for you to be a safe haven when you're surrounded by
It's
um
it's interesting. Most of the people who come are not local.
okay, yeah.
We have very little local support. I think we know there are 3 other vegans in our county and we're all friends. So,
Oh my gosh.
we know where we are.
Yeah.
So almost everybody who comes to visit or comes to work days or tours come from, more cities than they do
Mhm.
from our rural
Like the
areas,
local.
which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. We're trying to kind of pull in our local community a little bit more, I think it's important for people to realize there's a choice, there's something different, but also the challenge of we're kind of saying what they're doing is not okay.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a challenge there. But yeah, most of the people come from cities. We get school groups, we get mostly vegans want to come to the sanctuary,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
great, and we love that. But it's nice to teach other people who aren't vegan, the realities.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we do get all kinds of different groups out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's really
families and
cool.
individuals, and yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you have these guests who come in, have there been any impactful moments that particularly stick out to you that makes you feel like, yes, we're like it made it just further aligns you with your purpose?
No. I think I'm doing all the talking.
It's fine. I'll jump in when I.
He's right. I'm the one who talks all the time just because I can't not.
We love it.
But it's always the pigs. Every time the pigs
Oh,
and the turkeys are the ones who make the biggest impact on people. I think almost every time I give a tour, somebody says, I've never seen a pig that big. And the reason they haven't seen a pig that big is because they don't ever get to live out their full
they don't
lives.
make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that is an impactful moment. And then when you get to rub a 700-pound pig belly and they are acting just like a puppy, we have had multiple people, come back after they visited and say, since I met Sam, I've never eaten pork since.
Oh,
And when somebody says to us, hey, I stopped eating animals or I went vegan, or those are the moments that make it all worth it. And, and it's happened, even my daughter's teacher, they come out every year and
I
he
love that.
stopped eating pork after coming to visit. So yeah,
Wow.
so just those are the moments. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I love that. And how many residents do you have and what species are they?
You can do this one.
This is a very straightforward one, so you can take this one.
We're at about the 83 number now, and I think we figured we had about 13 different species of animals.
83. Wow.
Yeah,
That's a big happy family there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the hardest part is the 13 different species, I mean, with all the different types of animals, different housing, different fencing, different food, different medications, different ways of handling them, and it's a lot to keep going with, and that's where our volunteers are very much needed and helpful, and the donations, that's what keeps us going. I mean, we grew because of the donations allowed us to keep taking in more and more animals. And it's always nice when you have residents like Sam who you can just tell that they really appreciate what you're doing for them. And they're just happy and appreciative. And sometimes too, there's animals that we get in that we don't know their background, and they're scared of people for obvious reasons. And then when they finally come around and realize that you're there to help, and they warm up to you, that's just very, very heartwarming, and that helps keep you going and makes it worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how can folks get involved if they want to help support the work? volunteer-wise, financially? What are other opportunities that could be helpful to help you care for all of these, all of your residents?
So we have regular volunteers who come at least twice a month or once a week, and those are the ones really the backbone of what we do. They kind of become our family. They help us with animal care and cleanup, and repairs or whatever we need around here. We have, a regular group of volunteers, and people can just contact us, if they're interested in doing that. And not everybody has the availability to do something regular like that. So then we do special work days, like when you guys came up.
Yeah.
When we have big projects, we just kind of open it up and anybody can come and join us for that day, to work on big projects, or groups come and do project work. We have, of course, any donations are always loved and appreciated.
Yes, I bet.
For sure. I mean, that's what everything is based on our donations, and that determines how we do everything,
Right.
and sponsorships, we have, where you can sponsor an animal, and those are our monthly sponsors are really the ones, like, that way we know what our budget is. We know that we have this money to budget for food and vet care and buildings and bedding, and, so our monthly sponsors are, really the ones who keep us well supported, so we know what we can manage.
Okay, yeah, and we'll provide all of that information in the show notes too, so folks can check those out. And so, as far as, because you had the space, you had land to be able to take animals in, and a lot of people who volunteer in sanctuaries are very passionate about starting their own. So for those whose intention is to start a sanctuary, what are some important things that they should know? Any advice? What are some challenges that they may face and how they could be overcome? Just from your own experience.
It's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of time, and there are a lot of days where you just don't want to go out in the rain or the cold or the snow, but they count on you and you have to do it. And it's 365 days a year.
Yeah, no paid time off.
No. And there's times when, it's -30 for a week, and it's very scary.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, and you do the best you can. And you keep moving forward, and like I said, any help we can get is greatly appreciated. And we're just going to keep doing the best we can for the animals.
Anybody who's interested in starting their own sanctuary, 100% should go work at another sanctuary. I think, I think that we all go into it with this idea of we're going to rescue these animals and save lives. And and everybody else thinks that we sit around snuggling cute animals all day long.
Oh yeah, it's like 75 degrees outside, and everyone's just chilling and having a good time.
And it's beautiful, and we're petting little piggies all day long. Yeah. And I wish I had time to sit and snuggle the animals. And it's hard. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it's the hardest thing you're ever gonna do. And there's a lot of grief involved. It's just, I think you just have to look at the reality of it and make sure you're willing to really give it pretty much your whole life.
And like you mentioned earlier, like you have to, there's only limited capacity, and so you're gonna have to say no to some. And I think that's like one of the most difficult things that I always hear from sanctuaries is the loss of a resident, or having to say no to people, no to those who it is heartbreaking. So these are very important practical things to keep in mind too, because again, like there is that romantic idea of just snuggling with animals all day, and that that's not the reality.
It's not. No. Unfortunately. There is that part. That's the wonderful part.
That's what makes the crappy weather and like doing all the work worth it. It's just
absolutely
seeing them feel protected and safe, and knowing that. And so is that what you feel like? So now that you've been in the sanctuary space, are you involved in other forms of activism? Do you have a favorite, or is this like your niche?
This is really, I would think, I always tell people when, like an activist might say to me, oh, I could never run a sanctuary. And I might say, I could never hold vigil at a slaughter truck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think we all have our little special place in the whole movement. And we have the space here. We decided that this was the way we were going to, try to make a difference. And I guess our activism is really telling their stories and, and letting people know the reality of what life is like for the animals so that they can hopefully make better choices.
Just getting to meet the animals,
Yeah.
and, some people can't figure out how we know everybody's names,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, wow, they all have their own personalities too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big part of it.
You have to remember 83 different names. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I can barely keep 5 names together. But I feel like when it comes to the animal residents, it's like, because you just, they're priorities. Like, I don't care about your name, but the pig's name, I must know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I just thought of this. And when it comes to challenges of a sanctuary, and this is a lot of anecdotal things that I hear because often, veterinarians who are providing care for farmed animals do so in not a sanctuary capacity, to put it ever so mildly. So is that ever a conflict that you have to deal with, or is it difficult to get a veterinarian or a farrier or someone to give animal the care they need in that respectful setting that you're providing?
It's a huge challenge.
Okay.
It's a huge challenge. And I mean, the veterinarians farm vets are very different than companion animal vets. Like the vets who care for your dogs and cats that are pets. It's a whole different thing than the farm vets who are honestly trained within the system. Yeah. And they're part of the system. Like
they're not hugging the cows like they are not. They're like,
they are not. But we've been working with our one vet since the alpacas came. So what, I don't know, 13, 14 years now. And over that time, we've developed such a strong relationship where they know who we are, they know what we do, and they're very respectful, and we're good friends now. Where like they'll come out and say, now, okay, usually we'll do it this way, but how do you want us to handle this?
Yeah. Okay.
And we really had to work through that with them over the years, to say, we're not going to use a snare on our pigs. We're not going to, restrain this way. We're not going to do that, and we have a great relationship with them now, but and then sometimes we need alternate care at a different vet, and it's hard. Finding really quality care for our birds is really difficult. It's just not out there.
Yeah, often like they go to university hospitals and such, and that's where a lot of the training for students happen. And you don't want your resident to be treated in the capacity of the system. Exactly. And I hear a lot of that feedback from vegan veterinary students who feel uncomfortable or can't voice that they don't want to participate in certain things. And it's
hard.
It's a space to navigate. And I guess it's another thing that future aspiring sanctuary creators to keep in mind is that there is a lot of conflict of interest.
Yes.
In providing care, and especially veterinary care, and other just like shearing the sheep who need to be shorn, all of that.
Finding a compassionate shearer, finding somebody who's going to treat them kindly and go slow. And we've done all those things, and it takes time, and it takes, work to find the right person and work with them. But I think the vets, once you get there, they appreciate it. I really feel like they appreciate being able to take the time and be kind with your animals and enjoy it.
Because I imagine it's going to create some psychological stress for them too, to violently handle them and, mishandle them in such an aggressive way. It takes a toll on you as well. Now, I'm not saying that should be the sole reason not to mistreat another being, but it works two ways. But like, I would imagine that how they feel after, like treating them gently
Mhm.
and respectfully is going to be very different from when, you have to like physically hold them down
Yes,
and
absolutely.
aggressively
And I
handle
think
them.
I found too, I think a lot of times they appreciate when we say, yes, please do like move forward with your treatment. Go to the next thing. Yes, we'll spend the money. Yes, try
Yeah.
this thing. Because so many times, like farmers, they won't give them the
Yeah.
care. So the vet's hands are tied,
Yeah.
when they have things that they could do for them, but the farmers won't pay for it. So
Yeah.
I think, so sometimes for them, I think they're pretty excited and appreciative when we say, yes, please, let's
Yeah,
try it.
proceed. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is their quality of life.
Yeah,
I guess, and again, that's the difference between viewing them as property and viewing them as an individual, is
exactly.
that you're going to do what you can to treat them
Yeah,
versus just viewing them as an economic entity. Is going to be
right.
different. And
Commodity.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I have
And
to believe that most vets probably go into the vet sciences because they love animals.
yeah,
It's not just, I mean, there's probably some that think, hey, it's good money, that's what I'm going to do. But I mean, for the most part, they
sure.
all love animals, I would think.
Yeah,
And,
I would hope.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And it would be nice for them to come out and, like Brenda said, just do the right thing for the animal.
Yeah.
That makes them feel good as well, I believe.
Yeah, that you stay true to the profession. When same with
Yeah,
human doctors do no harm, that should be the same for the
right.
veterinary profession. And I've just envisioned a world where the whole veterinary training changed to treat every patient with dignity, and like what would that look like? And it's probably going to look very similar to how, like, what, wait, how is that going to look? It's going to look like how it is when you treat your dogs and the cats
Yep,
and the our companions.
exactly. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
so hard to, to
It's not so
imagine or to,
hard to
it's
like
not.
not mistreat people, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah. Mistreat
Yeah,
other individuals. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with the work that you're doing as a sanctuary and just within the vegan space altogether, what void do you aspire to fill? And the reason why I wanted to ask you that is just because of the nature of how you came into the vegan and animal rights space, that I feel like your perspective of the world and like what you've seen and what you've grown up with impacting the work that you're doing now is very different from a lot of what other folks may have
Mhm.
seen. So what is that for you?
I think a lot of it is, we live in a rural farming community.
Mm,
So I would love to engage our local community more. I feel like there's that huge gap. Like I said, everybody who
yeah.
comes here comes from the big cities. I
Yeah.
would really like to bring in our local community and say, I don't ever want it to come across that we're like against our farming
Or
neighbors or
yeah,
that, you
yeah.
know what I mean? I want to say, look, here's a beautiful different way we can do things.
Yeah.
And, and we can change the world together. I mean, you don't have to do this anymore. You
Imagine
know,
if like while driving to your place, all of the like the farmland that we're seeing were all just sanctuaries. That would
right,
be so
right.
cool.
Yes, or plant crops instead of
Yeah,
animal farming.
exactly.
I mean, we could be doing so many different things. So I
Yeah.
would love to, kind of shift the movement to a more rural,
Yes.
focus and bring in our local community to
Yeah.
say, and even to focus on the health for humans part of that
Hmm.
is important,
Yeah.
like this is better for you, better for the earth, better for the animals, come on,
Yeah.
guys, come
Yeah.
on over.
And do you have any ideas for doing some like
Um,
engaging with them?
we try to do sanctuary events. Like we did a pie and ice cream social and really tried to,
Oh, cute.
and of course it was vegan ice cream and vegan
Yeah.
pie. So it's fun. And when people can come, we just put signs out on the road. So people just came in and
Yeah.
then they can meet the animals and try vegan food. And
Yeah.
we're talking about doing like maybe some talks in the community,
Yes.
and talk about nutrition and talk about
Hmm.
animal welfare and talk about all the different aspects of it.
Yeah.
and
And I
just
think
see.
there's both of your stories are just so powerful too, like
Yeah.
from someone who used to hunt and like be engaged in 4-H, and which I'm sure a lot of the community is engaged in 4-H. So
Oh
having
yeah.
to navigate that without offending people is going to be a
It's
challenge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's been some challenges along the way.
But I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna keep trying.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And I think you also had mentioned, a lot of people they're either already vegan or from the city. So with the status of the vegan and animal rights community and the movement, where do you think there can be some improvements made?
I mean, of course, as a sanctuary, we're thinking sanctuary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
and
yeah.
we love to work together, and like when you guys volunteer at sanctuaries, or maybe even encourage non-vegans to come with you to sanctuaries to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's always so fun for us when activists come here and we get to talk, and you tell
Yeah.
us what you're doing, and
Yeah.
and you get to. I always felt like I wanted this to be a special, safe place for activists, because I know how hard
Mm-hmm.
it is being out there and witnessing and trying so
Yeah.
hard for the animals, and then to come to a sanctuary and to spend time with those animals,
Yeah.
it has always like meant a lot. And I'm getting away from your question.
No, no, please, please.
But
I love
yeah,
these
yeah.
tangents
I'm
too.
not really sure, like, the gaps in the activism. Can you think of?
Well, we're more, we do the sanctuary, and as part of the sanctuary, we're more into the just giving awareness to people
Yeah.
rather than trying to push a message,
Yeah.
which also needs doing. But we're just like making people gently aware of what the
Yeah.
reality of things are and letting
Mm-hmm.
them make their own decisions, And I
Yeah.
mean, taking care of all these animals takes a lot of our
It
time,
does. Yeah.
um, and we don't have time and energy to
Yeah.
do everything. So
And
that's where we're at. I guess we just,
Mhm.
introduce animals to the people and give them their stories
Yeah.
and open up some awareness in the reality of
Yeah.
where their food comes from.
Absolutely. And do you do this full time?
So, John works a full-time job outside of the sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in
Yeah.
Madison, so he's got an hour drive back and
Oh
forth,
boy.
and then
Wow.
comes home and works here. And I
Yeah.
work from home. So my
Mhm.
my daughter, so being her caregiver is
Yeah.
my paid job, but then
Right, right.
but then it allows
But
me to be home.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still a
So
lot. Like,
yeah,
so to have full-time commitments while also taking care of
yeah,
83 plus
yeah,
residents, it's a lot. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm just so in awe. So I'm like, I can barely keep
Oh,
it together for an hour. Like, so much going on.
Your life pretty much exists between morning feeding and evening
yes.
feeding.
Yeah,
Anything you can get done in between,
in the
that's
between.
great. That's all
Yeah.
you get every day.
Yep.
After
Yeah.
that, you're like, can I have dinner and go to bed?
Yes. Yes. I bet. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I am just so in so much awe. I know I've said that a gazillion
Oh
times
God.
already.
Mhm.
Thank you.
But yes, I think I do appreciate when folks think about creative ways to get more non-vegans to engage with sanctuary work or and because otherwise we're just preaching to the choir all day. Like
Exactly.
oftentimes at these meetings and conferences, it's just vegans talking to vegans, and it's like, how do
Right.
we get like we're
Yes.
just there's no point. Like I already know. So
Exactly. Yes, that's how we feel too. Like, I mean, I love when vegans come because it's so easy.
oh, it's so
you
easy.
know?
You're like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to like walk a
Exactly.
fine thread and like
Yeah,
tiptoe around or like hurting your
right.
feelings.
Exactly. And and it's good. We need each other to keep
Yeah.
going, so that it's really important too. But yeah, we need to engage the non-vegan community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and of course, with financial support, I think sanctuaries do need to be a top priority because then we're just falling into the same system of viewing animals as just commodities, or like what can I, just like a number, a funding number as opposed to their worth. So
Right.
and especially with a lot of the funding opportunities going towards what's going to maximize impact. And I think if
Right.
sanctuaries were to receive more funding, that would maximize impact in the long term, because they're the ones who are actually rescuing the animals that you can create any number of vegan meat products to get on the market. That's all well and good, but at the end of the day, you need to get to the source of the problem too.
Stop the bleeding.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
So I know I've taken up your time. You got to go relax after a day of doing super important work. But I usually like to end with the question, what does a vegan world look like to you? And the reason why I ask that to people, and more so folks in the sanctuary space, is I often think about what would it look like to just coexist with all of these animals in peace? Like, dogs and cats, they live in the city, but now are we like, where's the cow gonna live? And I'm sure listeners have heard me give the same spiel, but from a sanctuary perspective, is it still gonna look like they're all out in the countryside? Will all of the countryside operations just become sanctuaries? I don't know what that looks like. So what do you think for yourself?
I mean, I think a vegan world, I imagine that too. And, and it just seems so beautiful. And I know that in order to get there, it would be a process, and it would take a long time, and the number of farmed animals would kind of disappear. And so sadly, there likely wouldn't be, there wouldn't be some of the farmed animals, because they're only in existence as products. But then, maybe there could be some rewilding, or, some of the animals could go, with care and space, they could go back to living their lives fully, like sanctuary settings,
and they might just come to a natural balance, because it's not going to happen overnight that they all just got off the face of the earth. And then maybe it just gets to a point where they're not being bred in these exponentially high volumes. It's like kind of, it'll find their own natural balance. Some will mate, some won't. Like it's going to be,
Yes, if we could, bring them back to their wild nature. I mean, we've, for thousands and thousands of years, bred them to the point where they are now. So, I mean, it's not, it's not realistic that we could just stop everything and it would go back. It's going to take forever, but, we have that time. It can happen. And the world, I mean, if it would be so beautiful, and it wouldn't just extend to animals. Being a vegan world would take care of the earth. We'd be taking care of each other, the compassion and equality and justice. It would be for humans, for animals, for the earth. It would just be, It just encompasses everything. It'd be so beautiful.
Yeah, everyone makes a fair living wage. Like that's all included within a vegan world. It's not just about a certain species of living being. It's everything. And so we're all doing our best in this imperfect world to get as close as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there anything that I missed that you want to touch upon, or want to share before I let you all go?
Not that I can think of. I guess I think it was a pretty good interview, and got a lot of good information out there. And appreciate you again very much for having us on.
No, I appreciate you for doing the work and for giving me something to talk about, and getting to chat with you guys is always a joy. So much fun, and I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing. And of course, we'll be sure to link all of your information in the show notes, and people can support in any way they can if you're ever close. So remind me where you are located.
We're in Endeavor.
Okay, so
it's about hour north of Madison.
Yes. So anyone in the Madison, Wisconsin area and looking to be in a space of positivity and kindness and respect, like definitely check them out. And do you have volunteer days as well for people to come in and volunteer?
Yeah, we
Nope.
do. We always post those on our social media when we have volunteer work days and regular, if you're interested in volunteering more regularly, just reach out to us.
Yeah, or bring your friends, do a tour and
Yeah.
support their work, sponsor their residents. It's a great way, especially
Yes.
with the holidays coming up. Maybe just, instead of buying your family members presents, just have a donation in their name to the resident
Yeah.
and then guilt trip them into going vegan.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you both, Brenda and Jon, so much for all that you're doing. I am, again, so thankful and appreciative of your time.
Thank you. And right back to you. We appreciate what you
Yeah.
do too. Yeah.
Thanks. Look forward to
Absolutely.
seeing you again soon.
I really hope you enjoyed this conversation because I think it really goes to show the amount of remarkable growth that we as humans are capable of. Because clearly, once you know better, you can start doing better and inspire others to do so as well. And if you are inspired by the work that SoL Creations is doing in raising awareness and educating the communities, make sure to check out the links in our show notes so you can learn how you can get involved and contribute to the cause. And as always, please take a quick minute to rate and review the podcast. It helps others find it more easily, and the more people that find it, the more they can be inspired by the guests we have on our podcast and turn that into actionable change for the animals. If you're listening on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Our channel has educational workshops, talks, and other inspiring and informative content that you do not want to miss out on. At Animal Activism Collective, it's important to us to offer our content and resources for free so that it's accessible for everyone. And if you'd like the podcast and all of the resources that we have to offer and are able to support us, please consider a one-time donation or becoming a monthly Patreon. It helps us keep going. To make a donation, you can use our Linktree, which can be found in the show notes as well. You can also use the Linktree to keep up with all of the things Animal Activism Collective on social media. You can visit our bookshop, our merch store, and just keep up with everything AAC. And one more reminder that you can sign up for a free mentor as part of the Animal Activism Mentorship Program. And your mentor will help you with your activism and guide you along your journey so you can find how you can tap into your own skills, talent, and potential to be an activist for the animals. So if you're still waiting on that sign that you gotta get active for the animals, here you go. It's also important for us to remember that it will take all of us to come together and work together to achieve animal liberation. So stay focused, be effective, keep doing your part, let's support one another and create a kind and compassionate world for all the living beings we share this planet with. Until next time.